Thank you, everybody. This plenary session is really to bring together, synthesise the ideas and the discussion that we had in the 2 workshop sessions that we've held today. We only could make 2 each, so this is the opportunity to hear what the others were discussing and for us to pull out some of those, the common strands that are running through them. So we had the mental health, privatisation, equal pay and Māori activists workshops, and we've got one from each of those workshops here at the top table. I will introduce each person and then I'll hand over to them. So for the mental health workshop we have Nancy. So the mental health workshop discussed the experiences of our members working in mental health and of the people that they work with. The workshop discussed the factors contributing to the problems in mental health and actually what a good mental health system should look like in Aotearoa. That workshop looked at what actions we can take as PSA Union and members of a community and a wider movement to address the growing crisis in mental health. So Nancy's going to speak to us on that. Nancy started her nursing career in 1969 and commenced her career with mental health in 1975 at King's Seat Hospital, is that right? Where she also became a PSA member in 1975. She became a delegate in her workplace, acute mental health inpatient services at Middlemore, and she's been on many nursing MECA negotiations, and at present she's on the DHB sector committee and the mental health committee as well. Following on from Nancy, we'll have Amy Ross, who's over here to your far right. Amy is going to talk about, give us a summary of the privatisation workshop. The privatisation workshop looked at the issue of privatisation actually across all of our sectors, a little bit about the SIF review, which Amy knows intimately, and social impact bonds, the investment approach, and other parts of the privatisation narrative. So Amy is a member of staff with PSA, and she has a bachelor and master's degree in social work. She has been a PSA organiser since 2013. She founded SWAN, the Social Workers Action Network, and now she is the organiser role for that network. She's fiercely passionate about social work and social justice. Amy lives and gardens in the Wairarapa, and she sees the union movement as an integral cog in the wider movement for social change in this country. And then over here we have Jenny Goodman, who's going to report back on the equal pay workshop. Equal pay, my notes say it's an issue whose time has come, but look, that was 100 years ago, its time had come. We're really overdue on this one, but we're getting it to become an issue that no political party can ignore. So Jenny's going to give the feedback from that workshop. Jenny's a convener of the CPS committee, Rā Tongo Mahi Hapori, and an executive board member. She's a staunch advocate for workers' rights. She took a legal case which resulted in the in-between travel settlement. She's one of a considerable number of equal pay advocates in the CPS sector. It doesn't say here that you're a member of the board. She's also a member of the board. And she needs to be recognised for the outstanding work that she and other care and support workers do. I also want to acknowledge that she's also a very good gardener. So we've got to keep up on it. Our final report back will be from Sandra, who was at the Building Māori Activism workshop, and that workshop looked at the kaupapa contained within the Ngā Kaupapa document and asked what needs to change for Māori workers. How can we all stand up for Māori in our workplace, and going forward, what can we do from here to progress that? So Sandra is a health promoting schools kaiarahi for Waitemata District Health Board, and as a Māori Enterprise Delegate for Auckland DHB, she represents Te Tira Hauora as DHB Sector Māngai on the committee for Te Runanga. She sees accelerating equity as an objective in every role that she is involved in, no less in her role as Sector Māngai or even as a service delegate. It's important to Sandra to be able to advocate for the individual as well as for the group and Māori as a whole. Her commitment is to encourage Māori voice to speak up when they do, and to do all she can to support them for fair and equitable outcomes. Do you also garden as well? I don't know. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand over. We are going to start at the I think Nancy will start with you and then go Amy. So we'll do the order that I've introduced you. And we have around about 7 minutes to report back on the workshops. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. I would like to thank all those people that attended the mental health workshop this morning, and also my colleagues that were on the panel, also to Kerry, Ashok, Alan, Denny, to make this workshop possible. The key points from the mental health workshop that came out was the properly fund the mental health system. People are asking for that. Also the ring fencing funding for mental health to separate this population-based funding, because it used to be separate. We used to have the blueprint, which was separated from the rest of the hospital, but this is all put into one pool now. And to provide a range of prevention and early treatment services in the community, make mental health a decent place to work, to attract and keep quality staff, properly train and develop mental health staff, to set up an independent watchdog similar to the Mental Health Commission which we had before. Also, PSA should advocate for a good mental health system. We will raise awareness amongst members and the public to put pressure on politicians, and also to fix the root causes of poor mental health, overwork, burnout, stress, public servants doing more with less, job insecurity, unemployment and homelessness. We're asking for better coordinate the different parts of the mental health system and the other public services. Thank you very much.
Kia ora everyone. So we were talking about privatisation, and we traverse quite a lot of ground, as you can imagine. And just a caveat about why I guess that I'm doing this rather than a member. And we did give some consideration into the safety of members talking about this issue, because of course most of you will be feeling the effects in some way or the other, and so that's why we have me reporting back on that, just to observe the safety of our members around this area. So we were talking first of all kind of about what privatisation is, the privatisation agenda, so to speak. So it's not just about losing contracts to private companies, but it's also about the changing behaviour of our public service and non-profit agencies in terms of actually being forced to act like businesses and corporate agencies, even when they're still being delivered publicly. So they're very restricted, beginning to have to implement things like brand managers and relationship brokers and these complicated and, as we would consider, unnecessary roles just to survive. And we're talking about how we've actually been under this privatisation pressure for a really long time now. And that there was one example raised, I think, at one point, saying that a hospital was actually 50% privatised already, and most people wouldn't actually think that when they thought of our public health system. To think about 50% of those services are already privatised is quite horrifying. So it's kind of getting away from us. So one of the key points coming out from this workshop was how important it is for us to get our anti-privatisation message out. So part of that is about educating people about what is going on and countering that narrative of that it's the only effective and efficient way to deliver services is by this mythological magic of privatisation, and that somehow that is so much more effective than anything else, which has proven not to be the case. We were lucky to have Jess Berretson-Shaw with us, who is with the Morgan Foundation and is an evidence-based researcher. So we were talking a lot about using evidence, but the risks of that as well, like having to be very critical when we're presented with evidence-based research and things like that, because it's still being interpreted through a value base. So as long as we keep our critical lens on when we're being presented with what evidence-based practices, then we need to reclaim that space from the right wing, just really talk about what do we think works, what works, what are the outcomes we're looking for. And there was also a request that we have more of this kind of discussion and some training about privatisation and combating the myth and narrative around privatisation for delegates. So that could be some resources, some handouts, some myth busting, and some space and delegate training to actually talk about it. So So I think that's a really good takeaway from that. We also talked a lot about exposing the ideology behind privatisation, which is the neoliberal agenda that we've been living in under this country since the 80s, and really putting together for people all the different components of how that's happening, because there are a lot of different things happening all at once, and they actually form a bit of a jigsaw puzzle of a broader picture. But it's very hard for people to put them all together because they seem disparate. And so we're talking about how we can, in conversations with our friends and families and communities and colleagues, actually try to draw some of these issues together and see what underpins that. What's the value statement that is fundamentally behind saying that market and money rules? Because ultimately that is, let's unpeel that and sort of look at what's lying behind it. So we need to expose it, talk about it, and get our message out. So that's really, I think.
Kia ora, good afternoon. I'm reporting back on the Equal Pay workshop. Thanks, Erin. Thanks to the attendees and the panel, and also special thanks to Gabrielle Brickelli, our PSA Equal Pay organiser, for all her hard work in facilitating the workshops. The points that came out were what needs to change. First point was we need to finish the work started by the union and honour the PSA's proud track record in fighting unequal pay with a strong final push for equal pay now. We need to refer back to the first PSA conference, which was held in 1914, and the remit that they passed, that female employees of equal competence and male employees shall receive equal payment as to pay and privileges. And I think 102 years later, those words are still very, very relevant. Mention was also made in our workshop of equal pay fatigue, that some people are getting tired of hearing about equal pay. But I think we have to put it in context and to remember that nothing has been achieved without ongoing time and effort. In the home care section where I work, and disabilities, we can refer to cases like the sleepover case and the in-between travel time case. They weren't achieved overnight. They took lots of hard work and a great period of time before we got the result we looked for. To take our stories about the true values of women's work to the communities. We can do this through our family and friends, and in community support we can also do it through our clients and their families and community groups. We find it is the stories from the heart that resonate with the public and raise the profile of many underpaid and undervalued workers who provide essential services in our workforce. We can also stress that in older persons' care, that if we don't strive for equal pay and achieve it, there's going to be an ongoing workforce, an ongoing effect even to professional people and professional industries, because they will need to take the responsibility for both personal and financial, for the care of their dependents, because there's not going to be a workforce there to do that job for them because of the low pay. And we can also join the CTU in setting up regional hubs regarding equal pay. There's presently hubs established in Auckland and Wellington, but they want to expand to Christchurch and other regional areas. So, please join up and give them our support. And the third point was pressure the government and all political parties to support and fully fund equal pay right now. We can do this by lobbying our local politicians, writing letters to the papers, phoning talkback radio, and attending political meetings. And together we can achieve by equal pay by united and ongoing action. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm reporting back for the Building Māori Activism. Just like to say that I didn't realise I was doing that till lunchtime. Someone forgot to tell me. But that's okay, because we're on the same page anyway. The workshop was facilitated by Tracy and Tauia, so our national Māori organisers, and also with the support of Marshall, our convener tuakana of Turunanga Ngātoa Awhina. So our conversations that came through for building activism, initially we looked at the differences, or what became apparent was the differences between cultural awareness and cultural responsiveness. And if you can think about those, and you'll realise that there's a whole lot of difference between being culturally aware and being culturally responsive. It's the actual doing part, not the knowing. Communication came up as quite a big thing in terms of our kōrero. So communication within Māori members, communication within sectors and networks, communication between sectors and networks. So currently there's been some research happening, or there has been, from a young man called Taniora, I don't know his last name, but Right. And he has been gathering information from all of you in a what we call the Kaitiakitanga Working Party group, and through the information that he has collected, this is the communication between sectors and networks. So what we've found out, and what people spoke about, was some of the really great things that are happening within their sector and between sectors. So we've got sectors that are acknowledging and rewarding te reo Māori and cultural skills. We've got sectors that have Māori responsiveness teams or Māori advisory teams and groups. So those are really good things that are happening in the sectors. There's also, of course, we've also been able to see some of the things that are lacking. We've identified that health and safety don't include a holistic well-being area, so the Māori worldview may be a little bit different in terms of what health and safety is and what well-being is. So some spoke about the absence of spiritual and wairua areas that have impacted on their workers and how they're able to fit in with work with a particular situation that may have happened. So including spiritual things into the health and safety might be an area that we can support that. Another was also hinenaro, emotional, mental areas. So, we're all good on some of the physical things, but in health and safety, there's also acknowledging and recognising the emotional and mental areas that we need to be looking after all of us, each and every one of us. And another area that is perhaps not so good too is Māori responsiveness teams and advisory teams. And you will, if you were listening, notice that I put that on the good side, which it is, it's really good. But in some areas it can be that's the only area that our employers are going to, and they're not listening to the workers. Our wonderful advisors or responsive teams, some of their skills are great, but they might not be in particular relationship to where the worker is on the ground floor or at grassroots. So whereas it's a awesome thing, it can't be the only thing. So we've got to, look at those things too. In terms of going forward, Ngā Kaupapa, of course, is the resource, the instrument, the tool that we're really wanting to be included in so many ways. The things that that Ngā Kaupapa can be implemented into, and we hope it will be, is in collective bargaining. Even some of the processes now at our hui taumata, one of our sectors brought a little card about the same size as this, had a opening karakia on it, it had 2 waiata and a closing karakia on it. Now that's something that any advocate for the PSA in a bargaining team can read out that karakia, make that a norm, not just if there's a Māori member on that team, it can be a norm. And if there are Māori on that team, I'm sure they will feel happier for that. They might want to do the karakia themselves, but they don't have to. But those sort of things. Engagement agreements is another area where we hope Ngā Kaupapa and the PSA will be instrumental in implementing Ngā Kaupapa. Workplace policies, worker participation agreements, we talked about with health and safety as well, training, induction and education. Maranga Mai is a good area for that as well. Use union work to influence legislation. And I guess the last thing that came out on the workshop that I was attending came from our sister from Australia, Cara, and she talked about within our campaigns for Māori to campaign as well, to build strength on that. And I really agree with that in terms of we stand together, all of us. And if we were to have a Māori campaign standing within that, I would just like to say another a name that we could look at. I'll just put forward, not saying anything. Stronger together. So we stand together, and in terms of Māori, we're stronger together. So that just completes our a review of our building activism. Kia ora koutou. There was a slide I just wanted to put up. Was that available? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have to?
Was that what you were talking?
No. The slide I gave it. Do I have to press the button? Oh, it was up there.
Yeah, it was that one.
Oh, did you have time to ponder on that?
That was choice.
Yeah. So obviously that first bit, equality. We talk about equality, a box each, and the second one with the equity, using the resource that we have to enable, and often you'll just see those 2 pictures, but someone extended on that and say, look, we can let's take away the barrier. Yeah. And then our resource can be put to better use anyway. So let's go for equity, liberation.
Yeah.
Thanks to the panellists, to the people who have reported back from the workshop, but also for all of you for participating in those workshops. So what all of this information does is it builds into our work around the election asks. So Stand Together the reason those 4 workshop streams were chosen as their key strands in the Stand Together campaign. We want Māori activism, we want to change the mental health system, fix it, make it what it ought to be. We want to end privatisation and stop that slippery slide towards it, and we want equal pay for our members. So all of this feedback is completely in line with our election campaign, which is the Stand Together campaign. And just to recap on some of the ideas that the panellists have brought up, we have to start talking about funding as it relates to health, and especially to mental health. We need to continue to make that a strong message for the PSA, and the way that this is impacting on our membership around recruitment, training, and the quality of work is something that we have to keep in our mind. On privatisation, we have to have more discussion and training for delegates, and need to start challenging that market narrative that privatisation is the right way to go, narrative that's out there. On equal pay, I think we've got to fight past this equal pay fatigue. It's been a long struggle. But Jenny talked about working across unions and continuing with our lobbying work on that front. And Sandra talked about the need to build stronger communication in a number of different ways within our Māori membership and within our internal structures, and that ngā kaupapa has a place when we start to get into collective bargaining, that we need to start looking at normalising the inclusion of tikanga in our own practices as well, and that there's ensuring that there's a Māori realm to our Stand Together campaign as well. So it's all really a lot of food for thought, and this is the start of a conversation and a campaign that now runs until September or October, whenever that election is called in 2017. Before we close off this session and I hand back to the President, our pānui from Amy, would you like to?
Oh, yeah. I just really wanted to take the opportunity, because I love being in front of the mic, just to really do a plug for how all the different tracks by which you can get engaged, because what I've heard a lot throughout the workshops and also the days about all the things that need to happen, all the visioning, all the change and all the activism, and to do that we really need you. But there's not just one way to get involved, and I think it's really important that you understand that, because that can be restricting. I think, if you use social media, connecting with our Facebook page is a really good way to keep up with what's happening and find out about events that are near you. Thinking about becoming a leader in a network, or even a convener in a network, be an equal pay advocate, and get involved with the Stand Together, because this is our really exciting campaign. Connor has done an amazing job, and it's really stepping up from here to the election. So there's lots of different ways that you can be involved, and all of them are equally valuable. So I really encourage you to go to our website and have a look at some of the submissions we've been writing.